Good morning, I'm Matt Tolbert, and this is Matt in the Morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. How's your day been today?
It's been pretty great. I mean, it's 11 o'clock here in New York on a Saturday, so I got to sleep in a little bit, get ready for this, and then excited about the rest of the day.
All right, so the first question I want to ask you is what made you say yes?
Well, I mean, I saw you had a couple other VaynerX guests, of course, and then I like the questions that you said that we would talk about. Very upfront about what would be covered. So I figured, why not? I mean, personally, I'm really trying to practice my speaking skills and interview abilities. And so I figured this would be a great chance to start to work on that. And you seem like a lovely human being. And I want to get to know you a bit more as well.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope you have a great time here today and have an awesome experience. Let's get started. I was going through your Linktree links, and something I was super fascinated was your GIF page. They had over 200 million views. Can you give us a little behind the scenes story behind that, on how did you get started on that journey?
Sure. So I started that in like early pandemic. It was like end of April, May of 2020. And I was just thinking, wow, I don't think this has really been done where like one person or one account, you can search on GIFY and find anything you're looking for. And I thought, okay, this could be like a nice niche where people would think, who is that guy I keep seeing in all the GIFs? Yes. And then one day there may be a BuzzFeed article that's like, this is the guy you've seen in all the GIFs. So I really wanted to make sure I was wearing the same shirt in all of them. That is a very specific color. And so I really just tried I did at first like 180 different ones. I went through sort of all the emojis on the Apple keyboard and sort of tried to do a GIF version of that. And then I started to think of like, what are the things I search for when I'm searching for a GIF? I really did those. And then over the course of about a month, I kept adding to it. Every Saturday, I would record a whole bunch of them and edit them and upload them. It's fun. It's really easy. And it's a unique thing that like not a lot of people have done or do. And so it's really interesting. At Vaynermedia, which I'm sure we'll get to, we believe in like the volume of model and putting out a volume of content. And so I really took that approach to it of where I was just like, let's put it all out there. And some of these GIFs will perform really well and get millions of views. And some of them may only get 20 views because I didn't put the right keywords in, or it's not very interesting, or it doesn't stand out when people search for it. And that's totally fine. So you get those wins on the board by the more volume of content you put out in the world.
That's so amazing, and what a unique hobby to pick up during the pandemic. Like, that is so precious. Did any of your friends hit you up about like, oh my God, I think I saw you in a GIF?
I get people sending me Instagram stories all the time from people they follow, and they're like, I love it every time I see you and some strangers. And then some of them have been celebrities and like people who, I mean, not people necessarily that I know, but like people from like HGTV and different things. And they're like, oh my goodness, so-and-so used your GIF in their story. And that's where a lot, like some days, like one GIF will get 26 million views. And I'm like, how did that happen? And what's tricky about GIFY is that you really don't have a record of where they came from. So I can't see those views happen because they were featured, like it was the featured GIF of the day, you know, when they just select which ones to start with, or it's because someone very influential used one. So you never know, but it's always exciting when I still get them today of people sending me stories of or screenshots. It's really exciting.
It is so cool and super unique. Like, props to you for like trying something that you did not know what you were diving into, and it performed so successfully. I'll be using a lot of those GIFs in our content that I produce now.
I love it.
And speaking about your professional life, you started out as a photographer almost a decade ago, right after college, and worked as a general manager at a food company, then worked as a producing assistant at a theatrical company. talk about your professional trajectory on how you landed up at Vaynermedia. What was that defining moment in your professional life that changed the course forever?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a photographer mostly because people thought I had an eye for it. And then people in high school and college started to pay me to take their high school senior portraits, which is a thing here in the States when you graduate, or, prom photos or any actor headshots. And I majored in theater performance in college. And so it was really a nice sort of side job to help me pay through college, pay for my living expenses and things like that. And then I moved to New York City from Texas to pursue an acting career. And so I'm a very creative person, but I also obviously have this management side. And as a survival job, as an actor, auditioning actor, that's when I started to work at Baked by Melissa, which is a cupcake company here in the city that you mentioned. And I really, as silly as it may sound, I learned so much about leadership in that role, and email communication and logistics and scheduling, but really a lot about like hiring and firing and working with leading a team and developing people. And I really developed a passion for leadership through that role. As silly as it may sound, people thinking about a cupcake company.
But it's a company. It has like real operations. So of course.
No, yeah. But at the time for me, as someone who really identified as an actor, and like this was just sort of this thing I did on the side that I like tried to sweep under the rug or like not, expose people to. It was really a funny thing that I learned probably more in that job than in a lot of jobs I've had. But then I realized because I have the management and leadership skill set, I could make more of an impact on the theater industry in that way. There's so many actors, of course. So I really I wanted to work full-time in the industry. And so that's when I started working on Broadway productions as a producing assistant. And then I moved into general management of Broadway shows. And during that time, I got introduced to GaryVee as a personality by listening to his podcast. He was a guest on another podcast I listened to. I was doing a lot of driving at the time, so I just had so many podcasts in my queue, and I became a fan of Gary. And because Gary would talk about the way he treats his employees, how he runs his company, and all I could think about, it just grew my frustration with where I was, because I didn't have leaders like that. And I wanted to work in a company that was ran that way. And so eventually I had applied to Vaynermedia a few times, and I noticed there was someone who went to the same school as I did who worked at Vayner. I didn't know the person, but I reached out on LinkedIn and asked if they could ask the recruiter and make sure that my application didn't get lost or anything like that. So I got my first interview that way. I thought it went well, but it didn't go anywhere. And then about, 9 months later, I thought, what do I have to lose? Let me just email Gary. Gary's always talking about, in his keynotes, he'll say, just email me, Gary@Vaynermedia.com. I was like, I have nothing to lose. I already don't work there. So if something happens that I still don't work there, that's fine. But he replied, I want to say the next day, and looped in the same recruiter that I had met with and said, hey, what's going on with this guy's application? Is he not a fit, or can we, interview him again? So I interviewed again, and then I had a series of interviews after that a little bit more rapidly. And then I finally got the job as a project coordinator at Vaynermedia, which was sort of, for me, a step back in terms of where I was in terms of level. But that was okay. I was starting a new industry. I was moving from Broadway to advertising, and I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And I knew once I got my foot in the door that hopefully I could prove myself and move up and move around quickly. So that's a long answer of how I got to Vaynermedia, but I just had my 2-year, what we call Vaynerversary. So 2 years at Vayner. And I'm in my third position now, and I've been in also my third department. So 3 very different roles. I didn't move up in that project management track. I moved from project management to resourcing, which is finding the right people and putting them on the right teams based on skill set and budgets and all of those things, covering vacations and moving people around as a a new brand comes up where they need people who are really into golf, for example. So then finding other people internally who are into golf and seeing how we can move them around and that sort of a thing. But that exposed me obviously to the recruiting side of it. And this whole time at Vayner, we believe ideas can come from anywhere. And so I was creating content for our brands, even though it wasn't my role I wasn't a creator or an art director or anything like that. I was creating content for our brands, and it was performing fairly well alongside people who actually do that for a living. And so I was able to sort of do, for the first time ever in my career, both sides of the creative and the math, the art and the science. And I really have found a place where I can do that all the time. So now I get to recruit creators and manage their full experience at Vaynermedia, their growth, their training, their career trajectory, and all of that. And I'm loving every minute of it so far.
That's so amazing. I'm so happy like how you found such a great balance between, like your passion and your competency. I'm super curious to know, what did you actually write to Gary that made him respond to you?
Okay, so you know how when he does his keynotes and he says, hey, we're talking, and he'll say, hey, just email me and say, I'm the girl in the gray button-up shirt with the plant behind her, right? He'll say like things like that, right?
Yeah.
So my subject line was, I just started with, I'm the guy who, and I didn't nothing was misleading or a lie or anything, but I was just like, I'm the guy who's looking for a job or something like that. I don't know. And then it was a forward of my past communication, just so with the recruiter, just so he had the context. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what the body of it was, but I just knew if Gary always says, email me and say this in the subject line, that he would likely open it and read it. And then I was just very kind and humble and grateful in my email, and I guess that worked. So I don't think it was the body of the email necessarily that stood out, but with Gary, what I've learned, and I knew this beforehand, and I think it's what has found me success at Vayner, do exactly what he says. He says, yes. Email me and do this, and you email him and do that. When we're having a meeting at Vaynermedia now, and he says, I want this to happen, this and that, and this to happen, some people hear it as hyperbole, or some people think like he's exaggerating, or he's shooting for here because he knows we'll land here. And in some ways that's true. Mm-hmm. But I'm very much a person of like, I want to try to do exactly what he says, because I know that will work, because he knows it will work and he believes in it. I'm not the type of person I'm not really an idea person. I'm not the person who can run my own company or be an entrepreneur. Hmm. But if I can follow someone that I really believe in and do exactly what they say and operationalize for them and make things happen based on what their direction is, I know I can succeed in that lane. Hmm. And that's my lane. Yeah, that's sort of like, find someone you believe in and do what they say. Don't say, at least try it that way. Start that way. If they don't think like, okay, well, they said this, let me adapt it and do my version of that. A lot of times when people do that, I see them fail. And so I think do exactly what they say, start that way. If you start, then you can start to learn and taste and see, okay, what's working and what isn't. Then you can start to adapt. But when you handicap yourself right away by doing your own version of things, your own version likely hasn't been working, and that's why you need this advice in the first place. Mm-hmm. So go 100%, 110% toward what that person that you look up to is telling you to do.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I think one of the great things about Gary is like how I feel like so many people put trust in him is anything he says, you trust where it's coming from, So many times when he would try to give advice, very tactical stuff, it's coming from a good place, it's not coming from, like, oh, I'm going to slip in to buy my course or, buy this or buy that. And he's super, he walks the dog. I got like goosebumps as I participated in, Gary's NFT project when he said, buy so many books and how you would get like a gift in return and things like that. I was just kind of flabbergasted, but I was like, you know what? This is my moment. I'm going to trust him. And I was watching a tea with GaryVee, which was almost 2 months old. And that's where he was like, you know what? If you want to promote a book, why don't you say buy 13 books and you will get a live session with me? And that's exactly what he executed, you know. So he's a great leader, and no wonder he's built such a big company. And I'm super happy that you are so happy about working under a great leader that it makes you want to work hard and perform well. So I'm super stoked for you.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And I want to ask you, what would you say is your story as a person, you know, apart from your professional life, from when you were born to you bred?
Okay. Well, I was born in Rowlett, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old, which I mean, it was fine. Like, you know, you have 2 Christmases, you have 2 birthdays and all of that sort of a thing. But I grew up with, my dad had custody. And he got remarried fairly early. So my parents were really my stepmother at the time and my dad. And it's so funny because now they are divorced. My dad's in another marriage. But my ex-stepmother, sounds so weird, I'm very close to. And so, I mean, I had a very, I think, typical for the area, like middle-class life, suburban life, the Dallas area. Very strong Christian, and went to a Baptist university where I met my now husband. And what else personally? I mean, I really love living in New York City. I've been here since 2012, so 9 years now. And something my husband and I like to do for fun is trying basically all of the dessert places in New York. We consider ourselves New York dessert experts. And so we want to try if there's the newest, you know, creation or the newest shop opening up, we want to be one of the first to be there and try it out. It's really something we enjoy. We have big sweet tooths. And so, yeah, that's something I do for fun.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so amazing. So when you were growing up, what was your dream? What did you think your professional life was going to look like, even when you were in college or when you were in school? What were you dreaming about, the young Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to be an actor on Broadway, specifically. But I've always, my entire life, have had this struggle of, I love the creative side. I think I'm good at the creative side. Other people have told me I'm good at the creative side, but I also have this way that I can easily get ahead from this like management, math, type A personality side. And so a lot of the times I have had this struggle of like people either pigeonholing me in either way. That's sort of like where I've spent a lot of my life, was sort of that struggle. So I wanted to be an actor, but I was so good at these other things too. And so it's just been like constantly trying to find a world where I can do both things. And as a young person, like everyone's trying to get to a certain place in their career and they never feel like it's not quite perfect. So either they don't like every aspect of their job, or they don't like their boss, or they don't like their company, or whatever it is. And so it's not necessarily a unique story, but for me, I was always like, I don't want to do 100% creative or 100% management. I want to find the perfect mix of the two. So that's why I'm very happy where I am now specifically. Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to be an actor. That's the short answer.
I see. And when you were working at your theatrical company, were you happy? Was it different from what you had expected?
The glamour is very real. So the glamour of Broadway, the glamour of the Tony Awards and opening nights and red carpets and like people who are so famous to Broadway fans, but to the rest of the world are absolute nobodies. That's so interesting. But so that is what you expect it to be. But what I didn't expect necessarily was it's a very toxic environment, which is why I so much resonated with Gary's vision. But the environment of Broadway, the surprise was that there's just so many egos. And so like when you are in a certain role, you are the only person who can have an opinion about that specific thing. And so there may be hundreds of people working on a production, and everyone has a very specific role, and their ego about their specific role is so huge. And it really hampers collaboration, I think, because it's like, you are responsible for this thing, you're responsible for this thing, and literally hundreds of people. And then no one can really build on that. It's not a yes and collaborative environment. It's very, very
Rigid.
toxic, in my opinion. And so that was the biggest surprise for me, and why I really was looking to leave. But I felt like I accomplished a lot. We have the Tony Awards here are tomorrow night. I don't know when this will come out, but it's my last Tony Awards of shows that I worked on happening. So even though I've been at Vayner for 2 years, because of the pandemic, the Tony Awards were delayed, and shows can take 5 or 6 years to develop. So there are shows that I worked on maybe in their early stages, or like right before opening, or in the rehearsal room, that are now finally getting their accolades at the Tony Awards. So it's sort of my last Tony Awards tomorrow, that I can sort of feel like take credit, or not take credit, but like take pride in their success. And after that, then I'm just a fan, which is totally fine. And I'm happy I still love theater, and I'm happy to be a fan. But yeah, tomorrow should be an exciting night.
Well, best of luck to you. I hope the projects you worked on find immense success in them. And
we'll see.
There's this question we ask everyone on the podcast is, are you happy? So
yeah. I mean, I think happiness is a feeling to me, and I wouldn't say I'm 100% happy all the time, and I don't know that anyone could say that. But I think I have gratitude for where I am. I'm definitely happier than I've ever been. Like, as holistically, I'm very grateful for my home, for the city I live in, for my husband, for my family, for my job. There are so many things right now that are fulfilling and clicking. And I mean, contrary to a lot of people, I really thrived during the pandemic, and because I'm such I'm a people person, fine, but I'm really a homebody, and I'm really like someone who enjoys being very productive in solitude. And so throughout the pandemic, and even now, because even though things are opening up, like, there's still a behavior change, and we're not out as much as we were. We're not seeing people, even though we can, as much as, like, I have a list of people on my to-do list that I'm like, see so-and-so by August 5th, and here we are at September 25th, or see so-and-so by September 8th. And I keep pushing them off, not because I don't want to see them, but because, like, I'm not quite there yet. You know what I mean? And so I know that's not that, but like, I think I'm in a very comfortable place. So like, in terms of my happiness, like I'm very happy with the way things are right now. And I'm grateful for everything that I have, and I'm fingers crossed that I don't have, I've been saying this for years personally to myself, that I was just like, I really honestly haven't had a major tragic event in my life. Sure, maybe like growing up gay in a Christian environment, that was maybe tough. Having, both of my parents are in their third marriages. These are all things that maybe people could say, gave them some sort of, set them back in some way. But so many people have it so much harder, and I have sympathy and empathy for that. And I'm just grateful every day for what I have. And I know one day God will, he's preparing me, and one day he'll send something my way to test me. And I'm ready for that. But right now I'm very happy, and I've been lucky so far to not have any major loss or tragic events in my life. So yeah, we'll see how well this ages or if I'm jinxing myself. But I would have to say that I'm in a happy place.
That's amazing, and that is such a solid perspective to have. I would always ask my mom so many times, because I would say, like, you guys have been through such tough, challenging times, that I feel like now you deserve to be happy. And I feel like, maybe I've not struggled enough to realize, like, what true happiness is, like, like Gary says, adversity is your advantage. I'm like, I'm not sure if I've had adversity. So, my mom always says that, like the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you, right? You can't compare your pain to someone else's. You can't say like, oh my God, that person's going through more than I am. Of course, in a perspective that is right, but it hurts the same, right? And I think that so many times when we have the blessing to be in a good place where we didn't have a lot of adversity our way, that means that, we are in a place where we can think about other people. Because if a lot of stuff's happening to you, sometimes you can get so consumed and your perspective becomes so narrow. But when you're from an open, happy place and you feel so privileged to live such a blessed life, you can look beyond your own self. And I feel like even that has a solid purpose, And, I'm not sure if it's a great thing to wait for adversity, but definitely, you should just know that, whatever it is gonna come, it's gonna work in my favor, whether it's good, whether it's bad, it's just gonna polish me as a person even more. So, I hope you don't make not having an adversity, sound something fishy in your life, because I just relate to that. And that's a really interesting perspective you have on happiness. Like, I'm happy for you.
Thank you. And I appreciate your, advice and encouragement of what may be to come. But yeah.
Right. So to switch it up, what would you say is your favorite type of music?
Oh, my favorite type of music. It's so interesting because I guess around 2015, I made a big shift in my life from music to podcasts. Mm-hmm. And so I used to be, as a theater actor, like whether or not you're a good singer, you have to try to be. And so I used to sing a lot and all of those things. And so it was like musical theater music, maybe Christian music growing up, country music I love. But I've made a big shift in the last 6 years where almost exclusively the audio in my life is podcasts and content in that way. I'm not a big reader. So if I'm in the gym or if I'm like, I need to just listen to music, I will either, right now I'm really actually for the last few years, I've been into the Mood Booster playlist on Spotify, which is just very like poppy, uplifting, positive kind of songs. Right. And then sometimes I'll shuffle the music on my iPhone, which is all music from like high school. So it's like, oh goodness, it's like choral music because I was in choir. It's a lot of musical theater. It's a lot of Christian music, some country. All that to say, I don't know that I have a favorite, but I haven't been in music circles for quite some time where I really know like what's going on, what's the newest thing. I guess pop would be just like a safe bet of something I would enjoy.
I see. That's amazing. And what would you say are things that contribute to your happiness? What kind of hobbies you would have, like maybe art or anything you would say?
Sure. Honestly, right now, for the past year or so, I've changed up my morning routine a bit, where I will start the morning because I have a lot of jaw tension and it's gotten better, but I'll do some stretches right out of bed to like loosen up. I steam in the shower a little bit and let that go. I'll spend some time with the Bible and prayer and eat breakfast. All of those things, which take about half an hour or so before I look at my phone. And I think that has been a big shift for me. Just like the things that are happening on my phone can wait. And if I start my morning, whatever works for you, meditation or whatever, and just really setting the pace for the day of like, I think also what contributes is anytime I'm stressed, I start to think of things, and this is really like in the last week, because you have to change up your mantras, Sometimes you have a mantra and it just loses its meaning over time. And so my mantra over the last week or so is sort of taking things with an eternal perspective. So like whatever, it's like gotten so theological, but anyway, but please.
Yes.
Just like whatever's happening, like the stress, like what does this mean in 20 years or even in eternity? Like, does this matter? And like, yes. So what that means is What matters is maybe how I affect people, how I treat people, and what I give to others. What doesn't matter is, does this project fail? And sometimes, like, what's the worst case scenario? Let's say I lose my job. Let's say out of the blue, no explanation, I get fired tomorrow. I'm gonna be okay. Like, it's that sort of thinking about those things consistently. I think Gary even talks about, like, he wakes up every morning and as long as no one in his family died, he's good. So for me, it's sort of like those other things of, like, knowing worst case scenario, I know I'm going to be okay. I know I'm going to be taken care of, and stretching it as far as, like, an eternal perspective and putting that worry in that mindset can really alleviate a lot of things. So, but for me, it's sort of like, okay, not looking at my phone and have that morning routine, I think, is what has made a big shift for me over the last year and a half.
That's amazing. I genuinely believe, like, that is so powerful, because, like, starting your day right, like, and especially activities like those really grounds you and prepares you for whatever the day has to offer. Super happy about that. You know, like, that perspective takes a lot of strength to even go down that route and think of the worst case scenario. It is very easy to get caught up in super, like, trivial matters, you know, but to start your day right and take control over the days, I feel like a very important habit that I'm super stoked for you to adopt. And okay, so I would love to actually know your perspective on, with so many companies now, you know, canceling the requirement of having a college degree, is that something you agree with? If yes, what would you say are the characteristics you look for in young people that they exhibit to be hired by you?
Sure. I do think it depends on the industry, on the job. Obviously, if you want to be a doctor, there's some education that's important for you. But for jobs like that I hire at Vayner for content creators. To be honest, I don't look at the application, anything on it so what happens is people apply, and then they get sent a content assignment where they have to create, I think you're familiar, they have to create content based on a brief, and they have 3 days or so to do that. Then they submit. I try to evaluate all of those. Of course, I have exposure to the person's name because I'm trying to attach it to their submission, but I try to evaluate all of those sort of blind, without bias. I don't know your education. I don't know your race. I don't know your sex. I don't know anything. I'm just trying to evaluate your content assignment. Then, I sort of have like a grading system. If you pass that, that's when I will start to, like, when you pass it, that means you're moving to the next stage, period. So I want to learn more about you, right? So then I'll go to your application. I'll look at your resume. I'll look at the links that are submitted, which are, in my case, are people's social media accounts or content they've created elsewhere, sort of like the Adobe programs they're comfortable with and familiar with. And I'll put all of that into the application, so I see one holistic view of the person. But the only thing I look at, first of all, and blind, is the content assignment, because that's the job. That's what you're going to be doing every day, every week, and that's all that matters. So for me, a college degree, even when I look at someone's resume, I'm not looking at their college degree. I mean, if it's there, I'm going to see it, but, like, it's not something I look for or screen for, and it doesn't sway me one way or the other. I don't count it against you, because in some ways we don't want people who are trained in advertising. We want people who are trained on the internet, and they understand the internet, they understand social media. And so, but I don't count it against someone who majored in advertising or graphic design, even, just because I don't know what their experience is like. I don't know what how native they are on social media until I meet with them and I start to ask them questions about that. So yeah, for me, in my process, college degree has nothing to do with it. But there are jobs, obviously, where it's very important. So I think it depends on the industry, it depends on the job. But for the most part, what I do want to see is some curiosity, some eagerness to learn. So even if you didn't go to college, it's nice to know. I mean, I don't even care about like some program or trade school, but if you watched thousands of hours of YouTube videos to learn how to animate something in After Effects, that's great. Like self-taught is important. People who are curious is important. But in terms of a college degree or any sort of education on your resume, it's not important to me.
And as a recruiter, what would you pick? Someone with character over someone with skill sets? How would you evaluate that?
We actually recently hired someone who has really no skill set. So this person told me that they haven't been able to afford Adobe or learn Adobe, but their content test was, I don't know if you're familiar with Gary's decks of like how to make 64 pieces of content in a day and all of that. But like the content assignment was so clear that they understand our Vayner volume model or our method of creating content, that they submitted 5 different platforms. Each piece of content was contextual to the platform. It was just a volume of ideas, a volume of content, an understanding of the platforms that you could tell just from looking at the content test. Not great writing, not good design, not polished video editing skills. So no skill set. Met with the person, amazing human, kind person, in Gary's Discord all the time and knows his community, and just a strong understanding of what we stand for and how we approach content. So I guess definitely character. So you can have character without the skill set if I think that you're eager to learn and be trained. But if you have the skill set, and the only thing I really am screening for in my interview with someone is their character. So if you have the skill set and you don't make it past my interview, it's usually because there was a red flag or two in there of maybe you don't seem like a team player and you talked a lot about yourself and your method and how you were so brilliant that you came up with this idea. Right. So those are the types of things that I might screen for in my interview, in addition to how much someone understands the different platforms like TikTok and even Snapchat and Instagram, LinkedIn, etc.
Interesting. And the creator assignment that you guys would give, to the people who are applying to, that does not go out to everyone, right? Like you do skim through applications and that goes out to a selective group of people?
So it's interesting you say that. I do send it out to everyone who is eligible for the role they applied for. For example, we have some roles that are non-US and we have some roles that are US only. So I do screen for eligibility to work on the role that they applied for. And to be honest, the content assignment brief is worded in a way that does sound like you were selected. And that's because it was carried over from an older process where there was some selection. I changed the process, but I haven't necessarily changed the wording in that brief. So thank you for keeping me honest there. I do want to go back and audit all of those materials, but it's my philosophy that everyone should have the opportunity to do the content assignment. So yes, I send it to everyone who's eligible for the role. I do want to check on that wording so that it doesn't, it's not misleading in any way. But it's my philosophy that as I mentioned, sort of in terms of how I evaluate someone's application, I want everyone to have the opportunity to do that. Because you know what, why I think I'm good at this is a lot of it comes from my experience as an auditioning actor. And so a lot of the times you couldn't even get into the audition room unless you went to the right college or you had an agent or they thought you were the right look for the role. You could not even get an audition. And so because I went through adversity there, I guess, it's my philosophy now that everyone gets an audition for this role. Right. And then you can prove yourself through your content assignment. The reason, and a lot of people at Vayner like haven't quite like, why is Matt the right fit for this? And we haven't had the opportunity to talk about it, but a lot of it is because of my experience as an actor, but then also on the other side of the table in Broadway of like, and through casting and all of that experience. So I tried to take the best and the worst of that and fix it. And I've talked about this on another podcast, but I really think people who move from industry to industry are extremely valuable because they come with different perspectives. They come with fresh eyes. And if they solved a similar problem somewhere else and it may have looked different, it may have had a different name, but they can come to your industry and come with just like a unique solution that no one there would have thought of because they all started as an intern and were promoted from within. So I am for promoting from within. But if you are an employee that's been at the same company for 7-8 years, you can start to lose your edge or what makes you special and unique. If you're not, maybe you can stay at the same company for a long time, but you should be exposing yourself to a lot of things outside of work so that you can bring those back and come up with unique solutions for things in that way.
That's super amazing. Would you say that, when you select someone, evaluate someone based on the content assignment, and you'd say you would pick up character over skill set, would you feel like it would be hard to evaluate how a person's emotional intelligence is, or how a person's work ethic is, or how they would be willing to bleed from their eyes? But when you look at two applications, one person would look like they're a better fit because of the skill set reason, but in the long term, it's the character that play out other than skill sets. So how would you say you manage that conflict?
The work ethic is somewhat objective in the content assignment. If we ask for 3 to 8 pieces of content and someone submits 15, or they submit, there's one person who may submit just an Instagram feed with extremely beautiful graphic design, and someone else who has submitted a Snapchat or something I've never seen before. Like someone last week did, like on OpenSea, they like put their content as NFTs. I'm like, cool. I haven't seen that before, right? And then, so just, you can gauge someone's work ethic and curiosity definitely out of their content test. Now, can I tell if you're a kind human? No, that's going to happen later. So I guess if it is character over skill set, you have to really deliver. You have to go above and beyond. You have to really shine through in your content assignment, or you're right, you won't make it to the interview where I can really see your character shine through. So you really have to over deliver probably than someone else who has a strong skill set.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that clarity. That makes a lot of things clear. On that note, I want to ask you, what would you say is your dream, ambition, or your end goal?
Yeah, I mean, so I just got my current role, like we've been talking about it the last couple months. And what I've been telling people is that like, this is the legacy I want to leave at Vaynermedia. I wrote this job description. There's nothing in it that I don't absolutely love doing. So in terms of a career perspective, I definitely don't think I'm where I want to be. Like I want to lead a team. I want to pour into people. I want to help run something. I do have that capacity a little bit, but obviously everyone wants to make more money. They want to move up. So there's that sort of a thing. But for me, it's not very specific. But because I've gotten to this place in my career where I'm very happy and fulfilled, my mind has started to shift, and maybe it's with a little bit of age too, where my ambitions right now, I want to start a family and I want to be a parent. And as a gay couple, that's not like we can just pop out a baby. So you have to save money for that. There are lots of things you have to do that will take time. So for me, my big ambition at the moment is to start a family, and it feels in some ways like the clock is ticking. I'm 32, about to turn 33. That's not that old, obviously. But in terms of having to save like $200,000 to have surrogacy and all of the things, it can feel like, how will I ever get there? So that's my big ambition at the moment. The big goal in my mind, because from a career perspective, I'm very happy, and I know, and I've seen at Vayner at least, as I work hard, as I do things, I'm gonna move up. Like things will work out. So that's not necessarily specifically on my mind as much as starting a family.
That's amazing. I know Gary talks about it a lot. He's like, one of the things that he's been very successful at building Vaynermedia is promoting people quickly, rewarding people, and really recognizing talent and really cherishing your employees. Everyone I've spoken with, they've exhibited a different kind of confidence and happiness at their job. So that's amazing. And all the good love and blessing to you for starting a family. I really think that it's like one of the most special and amazing things possible. And thank you so much for sharing that. I really hope everything falls into place perfectly, and you're able to fulfill that as soon as possible. And Gary, you listen to him, so 32 is, you're a baby, he would tell you.
Of course.
And would you have any advice for young people, everyone who's just starting out, finding their way, and finding their place in the world?
Yeah, I mean, these are words you've probably heard a lot, but it's like humility and patience are things that and things that me as a 22-year-old thought I could, like, why won't someone just take a chance on me? Why won't they just put me on? And really what I've learned is that, like, you really just have to be humble, start at the bottom, work hard, be patient. And if you're not happy, go do your own thing. Like, go start a business, go create your own special venture, or do something on the side that will grow, and then eventually you can leave your survival job to go do that. But for me, it's really like humility and patience and curiosity, just always needing to learn. Like right now, I actually have this fear that, like, what if Vaynermedia or me or the people that I work with closely, what if we get so obsessed with TikTok or whatever is the right now, that we eventually become the new old. We become the new traditional. We have to constantly be thinking forward and being curious of, like, what's next, and learning and testing and tasting everything that's happening, so that we are always the now and not becoming so obsessed with something that may eventually be the old. But I think that is good advice for anyone, and especially young people, to be eager to learn, because that skill set, you're not going to get to stop doing that. You're going to need to be doing that for the rest of your career. So if you learn it now, don't just think, well, I went to college, that was the thing I needed to do, I know everything I need to know. Yeah. Because that's not true. A lot of times what's taught in colleges is 2 decades old, right? And by people who have never worked or don't currently work in that industry. And so it's just that, I think curiosity, humility, and patience are the 3 main things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. On that note, I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would like to ask me?
Yeah. I mean, there's actually a lot I'd love to ask you. But for the purpose of your audience, I'm curious, best case scenario, let's say you became a creator at Vaynermedia. You got to work closely with Gary. Gary walked you in and said, anything in the world, what could I do for you? What would you ask for?
Wow, that question gave me the chills. I think I would define my end goal to him and start working backwards and ask him. I see him as a great leader, and I know he's the kind of person who is the leader of leaders. He's just operating from that place right now. My end goal would be, I really want to start, by 2030, I want to start my business in, sustainable development, something centered around the UN's 17 goals. That's something I'm very passionate about. Being from Asia, I feel like 70% of the problems stem from here, and I feel like the solution should be from here. And being in India is a place that has the largest youth population. So I feel like the way the youth are thinking today, what they're doing today, is not just going to shape the country, but the world. And I see a lot of a sense of purpose in it. And Asia and India in general is a place where school is everything. If you're not good at school, you're future is a doom. But being bullied by my teachers, I really lost a lot of faith in the education system. And that's when I decided I'm going to build my own path. But I know what, I'm not a business person. I can't be a CEO. I don't see myself running a company. I feel like more of like what Gary says, being a number 3 at Facebook, that kind of person. So I think I would talk to him about that. And I want to train myself over the next 7 to 8 years where I turn into a machine who can run a company by herself. I'm currently in a place where I'm very dependent to find an opportunity, find a chance, find clients. I want to be self-sufficient so that I can provide for other people in a very different way. So I think I would share that with him, and I tell him that, give me the hardest task possible. I am that person who would bleed from my eyes and stuff like that. I think I'm just really, really hungry, and I feel like I genuinely believe if you put your mind to something, you can do anything. And I feel like not being able to work for a very long time, one is able to really appreciate anything one throws their way. I never thought I would be a creator or something, but listening to Gary's advice, he said, start a podcast, build a network. People are the biggest ROI. So I would listen to every piece of advice, write it in my notebook, and try and execute on it. I feel like sharing that story, I would just tell him hey, I need to be put in a machine and I need a great master. And I know I'm a great disciple who can be trained into that sharp sword, who can eventually, do my dream thing, which is, start my business around that thing. So I think that would be the conversation I have with him.
Well, that's amazing. And you're showing that you can follow that advice. He talks about the high school party rule, right? Where you start a podcast and you invite the people that you want to be your clients or the people you want to network with. And you've done that, obviously, to great success. So you're demonstrating that you can follow direction, that you can run something, that you know the logistics, and you're organized and you're responsible, and that you didn't do 2 episodes and give up. And you're creating content on your Instagram, slicing this up into different things, and you're really demonstrating that you can take advice and take direction, and that you're not going to drop the ball. And so I applaud you for that, and thank you for sharing with me some of your ambitions and goals.
Thank you so much for those words. They mean a lot. Thank you so much. And on the last note, is there anything that you would like to talk about? Anything in specific? Any topic that you would like to discuss?
Oh, goodness. I think we touched on a lot. You went pretty specific and deeper than I've really gone before, and I appreciated being able to share. I don't get to talk about, or don't take the opportunity to talk about, my faith very often, or being gay and Christian very often. So I appreciate that opportunity when I get to. And you really just, anytime someone, asks you questions and you get to talk about yourself, it sounds so silly, but it's very rewarding and not something that I do very often. So I appreciate that opportunity. But I think we covered a lot of things that I don't get to talk about or share very often. So I appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you so much, Matt. And on the last one, I want to ask you, would you have any advice for us? Any way that we could have improved or done better?
You mean as content creators?
For this podcast, any way we could have improved our episode, our interaction today?
Oh, well, I was surprised to see that you only distribute on YouTube and not on podcast platforms. Why is that?
Right. So I think I was just a person who consumed podcast on YouTube and a very visual thing. And I just saw it was a very selfish decision because I consume videos a lot and videos very differently. And I felt like people might not find interest when, they have no context on who I am. They have no context on what is going around. But when you see something visually, it is much more of a storytelling. And I understood my bandwidth. And at that time, I knew that I would see YouTube and I would slice it up into LinkedIn, Instagram. We don't have TikTok here. We have Reels and things like that. And it was a very strategic decision as to I was seeing what would be the end result from getting these back. I felt like maybe uploading them on Spotify, it would just be a lot of platforms where people might not have any context. They'd be like, who is this girl? Why is she talking about random things? But I just saw how I consumed content and I did that. I struggled a little bit with being... audio was something that didn't stay with me. I know it's something I should have done, but if I could do my YouTube and all the visual things at a 80, versus audio at a 20. I would rather pick doing all the audio video stuff at 100. I feel like that is why I made a decision not to distribute on the audio platforms, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Of course. Well, it's never too late. You can always release them later. I don't know if you're familiar with the platform Anchor, but you can basically just take the audio from this, upload it to Anchor, and Anchor distributes it for you to Spotify and Apple and all those different things. And you can use the same title, the same description as you have on YouTube. Totally up to you. But Gary talks about the reason he writes books and the reason he does things that aren't natural for him is because everyone consumes content in different ways. And so I would just encourage you, just based on that and how it's a lot easier to distribute the audio than it is to cut up the videos and put on the headers and the captions and all those things. So if you have the time, it's something I would encourage, but don't feel like you're disappointing me in any way if you don't. I just, you asked for a recommendation, so that's the only one I have for you.
Thank you so much. I was not being lazy, but I was just fearful of that platform. But this is definitely something I needed to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
Matt, I hope you had a great time today.
I did.
Amazing. Please have a great rest of the day. Please stay in touch. Let me know if there's value I can add in any way. And I'm going to hit you up as soon as our podcast episode goes up.
Oh, please do. And likewise, stay in touch. And same thing with anything I can do to provide you some value.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. Have a great rest of the day. Be happy.
All right.
Bye.
You too.